Okay, now I'm going to walk you through the syllabus. So you can find this on Blackboard. I also attach it to the email, and I'll show you how to use Blackboard in a minute. So the top of the syllabus just gives you the basic information about how to contact me. I'm going to zoom in a little bit just to make sure that everyone can read this. So one thing I want to point out is by far the best way to contact me is through my email address. Please use the one listed here, not the one you might find through the Graduate Center website. I don't think my email is listed publicly at anywhere on the GC website, but people in the past have said they've had issues contacting me because they use the wrong email address. Anyway, just please use this one at Baruch. That's the one I check very frequently. And I do not have an office here at the Graduate Center. I have one at Baruch, which is what you just saw in the background. So there's my info. We can meet there if you need to meet. We can also just meet at the Graduate Center. There's a space that we can use if that's easier for you as well. And just email me. We'll set up an appointment for a mutually convenient time. Now, I'm not going to go through the details reading this course description. I will leave that to you. I think, if you read this, you'll have a pretty good sense of what I'm expecting to see a student who fulfills all the assignments of the course walk away with. This course doesn't have a traditional textbook. We will read the book Lean In, which I suspect many of you have heard of. You can get that on Amazon. I think that's probably the best way to get it, or probably at any local bookstore. I don't know if the Graduate Center even has a bookstore, to be honest with you, so I would just go to Barnes & Noble or something local if you don't want to use Amazon. So we won't talk about this book until the last meeting of the course. However, I think it's a good idea to start reading it earlier. First of all, because you don't want to put off reading the whole thing until that very last week. And second, because I think it has a lot of relevance to things we'll talk about throughout the semester. So it's a good idea to start that early. It's a really pretty quick read. I think you'll find it interesting, and some of you may have already read it. So do pick up that book sooner rather than later. Other readings come from all kinds of sources, including some edited book chapters, journal articles, as well as the popular press. I posted all of these readings, except for those you can access online on Blackboard. I'll show you that again, as I mentioned before, in just a minute. And you should read the articles before you come to class on the date that they're listed on this syllabus. Right? So that's part of preparing for that class meeting when we talk about a certain subject, is having done the readings beforehand. It's a good idea to bring a copy of the reading with you when you come to class, just so you can go through everything. You can use your laptop if you prefer, or a tablet. However, ask that you don't use a cell phone, just because it's pretty hard to read articles on a cell phone, and it can be distracting for me as the instructor, because I don't know if you're texting or you're reading the articles. So either bring a printed copy, or please go ahead and bring some kind of electronic copy. Some of these assignments will be what I would call stretch assignments, meaning that they're going to be difficult for you. But like I said before, please just make sure that you do your best to do the readings. It's really hard for us to have a good class discussion if people don't come in prepared. And this is different than an undergraduate course where the readings are posted by the instructor, but many people don't do them. It really is imperative that you do the readings, and you will not receive a high participation grade if it's evident that you haven't done the readings. Relatedly, I have some info here about class participation. So it's a very participation-oriented class. You're expected to not just show up, but also to contribute to the conversation. And if you miss more than one class, that will negatively affect your participation grade, given that we only meet once a week. Right? If you're going to miss class, it's a good idea to just kind of give me a heads up via email before. I understand that things come up, so feel free to communicate with me what's going on. If there's extreme circumstances, I'll be a little more lenient on the participation policy, but generally missing more than one class, I think it's hard to stay on top of things. So how will you be evaluated in this course beyond participation? There are 2 exams, both are take-home. So it's a midterm and a final. They're both essay-based, and they focus on things in the readings and what we discuss in class. So if you do the readings and you pay attention in class, you should be just fine. And they're typically about 5 questions, and we'll talk about that much more in detail right before those assignments are due. There are also 3 homework assignments, the first of which is due our next class meeting on September 10th. That assignment is for you to interview someone who has a job and some sort of substantial family responsibilities. I'll pull up that assignment and walk through it once we get to the Blackboard portion of this. Then you have an assignment which I really like, is a media assignment where you're going to watch a TV show and pay attention to the way gender roles are portrayed and do a write-up of that. And then the last assignment has to do with family-friendly benefits. You're going to do some research on some various organizations. Then you also have 2 article summaries. So this is one of those assignments I mentioned that helps you get into understanding what really research is all about and how to read it. I have a form that you'll walk through before the first one's due. One of your readings the week before, we'll actually do a mock one of these and walk through how you fill that out to help you feel a little bit more comfortable. And that, again, is posted on Blackboard. Finally, the last thing you have is the term paper. So this is really research-based, where I want you to review any topic you're interested in within the field of work and family. So it could be things like commute time, work and family and single parents, really any topic that you find interesting. Although, I will want to approve that topic before you get into it. We'll have a day where we talk about those in class, but you can certainly get that topic approved ahead of time, and I do suggest that you do that. I posted an example on Blackboard that you can look at a previous student term paper, just to give you a real sense of what I'm looking for. The big part of this is you're going to have at least 8 peer review articles that you get through probably the library database, and I'll show you how to use that. And there's just information here. You should complete everything independently, and there is a late penalty. Here's a breakdown of how everything is scored. So you do want to, it's a nice breakdown where if you do poorly on one thing, it's not going to sink you. So don't fret too much if you struggle a little bit in the beginning of this course. And then I use the standard grading policy that is used in CUNY. A couple other things, probably goes without saying: please be courteous, arrive on time, turn off your cell phones, only use your laptop for taking notes. I will communicate with you through the email address that's tied to Blackboard. I don't know how you can change this. You can talk to IT, but it's nothing that I can control. So if it's an email address you don't usually check, I suggest having it forwarded to one that you do check. It's very important that you do this. That is the primary way I'll communicate with you, although I just sent a direct email initially because I know that a lot of you aren't set up on Blackboard. If you have any kind of accommodations for disabilities or religious reasons, please just let me know so that I can appropriately accommodate you. Anything with school cancellations, I have a policy listed there. I used to always say this was an issue when I lived in Florida when I went to graduate school and taught, because we had hurricanes, and then lo and behold, Hurricane Sandy came and we had to miss a class. So I guess it can happen up here. And then finally, there's info related to academic honesty. I encourage you to please review the Graduate Center's academic honesty policy. I take this really seriously. A big thing in this course is plagiarism, so you need to make sure you're appropriately citing resources and not copying them verbatim. And we'll talk more about that as the semester progresses and you start working on your project a bit more. All right, so here we have the tentative course schedule. So you can just see generally what we're going to cover. We start with a basic introduction to the topic, and again, this is on Thursday, so don't forget that. Then we don't have class again the next Monday, and then finally we go back to normally meeting on Mondays. Then we'll get into gender roles in general, then we'll talk about men and women at work, men and women at home. We'll get into a debate about the Can Women Have It All article that many of you may have heard of, written by Anne-Marie Slaughter. We'll read that. We'll also read the male reaction to it. Talk about the role that class and the syllabus says class and class, it should say class and race, so I'll update that. And then we'll get into non-traditional families. Finally, we'll look at the impact work family has on the person and as well as kids, and then organizational responses to it, whether technology is a help or hindrance, right? There's kind of a debate, are smartphones good or bad for work-life balance? And then finally, we'll close with talking about lean in and thinking about some alternative solutions which involve governmental intervention. And then I've given you the very last day of the class off just to give you some additional time to work on that term paper, because I know it's a lot with the final being due also that next week. and I want to make sure you do an adequate job. Here's the reading list, so it details each week what you should read. Again, you want to read these before that week is listed on the syllabus. So for next time we meet on September 10th, please read these two, Greenhouse and Allen and Shockley. That's an article by me. And as well as turn in that homework assignment that's also due. So all of these are posted on Blackboard with the exception of those that have hyperlinks. So you do want to make sure that you download those and give yourself plenty of time to do the readings. Okay. Okay, the next thing I want to show you is how to use Blackboard, for those who may not be familiar. So I go through Baruch, because that's where my home institution is. You'll go through the Graduate Center. I just Googled Baruch Blackboard, this comes up. I'm assuming the same thing does for the Graduate Center. And this information should have been already given to you through when you enrolled in the program. So you'll have your own unique username and password. Then you'll see, and mine's going to look a little bit different than yours, because I'm on the instructor side. You'll see this course, Fall 2015. If you click on it, if you go to content, this is where most of the info is. So here's all the readings. All right, so here you can just download them directly, and it has them all laid out for all the various weeks. Go back to content. Here's the assignments. So here's your first assignment. Okay. So ideally after completing readings for the December 15th class meeting, that should actually say September 10th. Update that now, and I will resave that on Blackboard. You're going to interview somebody who has substantial family responsibilities. Then you're going to write a 2-page double-spaced summary of your interviewee's responses to the questions and giving some context in the beginning about his or her work and family situation. And then you're going to, on top of that 2-page summary, you're going to write about a page, again double-spaced, that talks about how you think that what your interviewee said, how they think about work-life balance, ties into how researchers commonly define work-family balance. And when you read the Greenhouse and Allen reading assignment for that week, you'll understand what I mean here, because that's really the main topic of that chapter. And then how your interviewee's response ties into 2 concepts other than balance that are discussed in the Shockley reading. Okay. Again, once you read those, that'll become much clearer. So you really should do those readings before you do this interview to help guide you. You either need to attach interview notes to this assignment, or if you wanted to record them, you can email the audio file to me. So here's some of the questions, right? How do you define work-family balance? Describe your work and family situation. Has your definition of balance changed over time? What's your strategy? What kind of support systems you have used to help manage multiple roles, etc. You can add whatever you want to this. These are just some ideas to get you thinking. Really, the purpose is just to get a sense of how this person manages work and family, how they think about balance, what effect it has on their well-being. And again, this is what your finished product is that you will turn in. Okay. And then every other assignment that we have is here. I've also put an example term paper for you. This is a previous student's paper. The assignment was a little bit different, so I tweaked it a bit, but that will give you a pretty good sense of what I'm looking for that. In terms of discussion, so I will create a forum that will say, I'll go ahead and create it. Now you should be able to go in, and unfortunately I can't show you exactly how to do it because it looks different on my end than it will on yours, but it should be pretty self-explanatory once you see introductions, that it'll say something to the effect of post, so you can create a post. And as I detailed in the email, I want you just to give a basic introduction and background of yourself. And before you meet again, it would be wonderful if everyone could just review everyone else's posts so we have a really good sense of the class. I don't want to take too much time up in our first meetings for redoing all of these introductions. All right, so if you have any issues with this, let me know. I'm sorry that I can't show you more specifically how to do it, just since I'm on the inside, it won't allow me to do that. So the discussion board and the content here are really the main things you'll be using in Blackboard for this course. I'll also post the lecture slides. I post those after the lecture rather than before. Pedagogically, I find that better for note-taking. So you can look for those later after each course. Usually post them right away. And then the syllabus is here. So one more thing I want to show you is how to use the library. Right, so you go to the Graduate Center Library website, and you can search databases. So this is how you'll find those peer-reviewed articles for your term paper. Now there's a couple search engines that I mainly use. For psychology research, PsycInfo is the best. So if you are at the Graduate Center, you don't need to do this extra step. If you're not, you'll log in. This, I believe, is the same login as your email. It is for me. I can't vouch 100% for you, but I think it will be the same. So let's say I'm interested in work, family, and single parent. So now, and I didn't select a field here, I could get more specific if I say I want the term work family to be in the title of the article or in the abstract, that kind of thing. But here I just did it generally so it'll pull up really any reference to the term work family and single parent. And then you can see as you go through, these are all articles that come up with those keywords. Sometimes it'll say linked full text. This is how you access the article. You just click that, and it will pop up. Sometimes it doesn't have that, so you have to do this extra find it at CUNY click. And then from there you should see a full text online. And then you can eventually download it. Sometimes there'll be articles that CUNY does not have instant access to. Let's see if this might be one of them. It's not, but occasionally you won't see any full text online link, and you'll see something with a reference to interlibrary loan. If you really want to find an article, you can click that, and then you can request it through interlibrary loan. It'll have you enter some information, and they usually send it to you within a few days. So if I wanted to narrow it down more, I'm putting this in quotes. Let me do that. So that eliminated some of the studies. If there was a specific study I wanted to look up by author, like so let's say I want to look up my own work, then you would go over here and you put author, and that would show you all my research. If you knew the name of a study, you could type that in and just do title, etc. So I like PsycInfo. Other good search engines are, it kind of depends on the topic. If it's something more businessy, you might try Business Source Complete. The one that I really like, besides PsycInfo, wasn't showing up on that list, it is called Web of Science. I think it's probably the most comprehensive across disciplines. So you can see, if we do that same search, before we had 64, actually this one's only giving 16, so typically it is more comprehensive, but I guess interestingly with the search it's not. So it's good to kind of do a combination of the different search engines. But for most of PsycInfo will be good. If you're not finding a lot there, I would try Web of Science. Another one you can try is sociology search database. Which is this one. Social sciences full text. So this one has even less, but you get the idea. So a couple different ways you can search, but another option is Google Scholar, which some of you may be familiar with. But I think it's less, you tend to get things that are a little bit more all over the place and not necessarily peer-reviewed. But you'll see some decent studies. So to tell us something's peer-reviewed, usually it's going to be in some kind of journal, right? Something in New York Times, we wouldn't call that peer-reviewed. And when in doubt, you can always ask me. Okay, so I think that has covered the basics of what I wanted to talk about in this first class session. So I thank you for listening, and I look forward to meeting you on September 10th.